Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports as ordered. And do me a favor out there. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. And I have with me the even kill. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jersey. And he wants all you fools out there to know New Jersey is America. New Jersey with the first baseball game in 1846 in Hoboken. America's pastime, America. Mr. Logical.
Can't beat it.
Do not bring feelings to a fact fight.
We packed up here.
And of course, you got me, your unorthodox statistician, going left so much you thought I was southpaw. Came up with the name Manny Nichols. Going left so much, I got more moves than Bama trying to wiggle their way into the college football playoff.
Can't wiggle out this bag.
2-5. Let's go. So, Mr. Logical,
I'm listening.
I've been hearing some talk, and it surprised me a little bit. And it's not because I think it's unwarranted. It's just because people don't normally do this. But I've been hearing the name Saquon Barkley attached to the MVP award. What do you think about that?
Shout out to Adrian Peterson's, historic season. He should
What's
be
happening?
I mean, it's that simple. If you look at what the team did after he left, and what the team did last year that he's currently on,
right?
How they looked coming down the stretch. You put him there, and even in the game against New Orleans, where it was a tight game, he had the big run that broke it out. We could talk about even the drop he had against Atlanta that ended up, they had to kick the field goal. He didn't get down. He just had explosive game after explosive game after explosive game. I had to bring up Atlanta like up front. But what he did Sunday,
right?
I'm sitting there, I'm chilling underneath the weighted blanket, just getting my chill on. Watching Hallmark movies on TV, shout out to Reach. And I got the game on my phone. It goes into halftime, do my little run around, grab my snacks, sit back down. Goes a commercial. I'm sitting there, I'm watching it. Watching the movie clip. I think it was like the movie with the girl from the big city, or from the small town, goes to the big city, comes back, meets the guy that's in charge of the bar who he got from his dad who died. You know that Hallmark movie.
Right.
The big thing in the town. So I'm watching that really locked in. And I look down, and the score went up 6 points. But it was like 14:49 left in the third, and Saquon is holding the ball. I'm like, did he return the kickoff? Like, did they put Saquon on kickoff return? I know they did it in college. So I looked at the replay. It was like, oh, so he just took a nice little stretch handoff and took it 70 yards. And I'm like, okay. And then he did it again later. And then you can see Jalen Hurts pointing when he got through the line of scrimmage. It's like that didn't happen in Philly last year, even at 10-1. And then I saw a clip today where he was, from the sideline, and he was going up to all offensive linemen and the tight ends. He was like, we did it. We broke Shady's record. We did it. And everybody's like, I told you you would do it. He was like, and he kept saying, we did it. He shook everybody's hand. He was like, yo, we did it. We broke the record. We did it. We broke the record. And everybody's like, yo, you really did it. He was like, yeah, I can't believe we did it. And it wasn't like he was like cutting them off from saying you. It just organically, you could just tell like he really respected what they did for him. Man, like it's his to lose at this point. I know Vegas is going to have different odds. I know Lamar had a really good game last night. People are always going to want the quarterback to win it. I don't know why people always want the quarterback to get the nod when they already have the advantage. That everyone, like, they get the ball the most. They get credit for where it's deserved, but they get it so much. It's like you got to look at touches versus impact. You got quarterbacks. Everyone's throwing the ball 50 times a game. If you throw it right, if you throw it to the right guy and he's open, you can get 4, 5, 6 touchdowns out of 50 attempts. You give Saquon the ball 50 times.
Well, you know what? You know what? I'm gonna give you the reason Saquon Barkley shouldn't be in the MVP conversation.
Here we go. That's what I call you 2-5.
There are no reasons, actually.
But
while we're at it,
that was like.
But while we're at it, Hot Box. Check out the Hot Box, my man. Cups Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, live on Facebook and YouTube. One Mic Podcast Mondays and Thursdays. Get those gems. So as you can see, I pulled up on the screen here, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Hopefully you can see that. It looks a little blurred out on mine, but the point being is that nobody's having a season that is saying that they should be the MVP. In this situation, besides Saquon, Lamar Jackson, if you look at the metrics, is actually having the best year of his career. He's already going to pass his touchdowns from last year, so on and so forth. But the Ravens are losing games. The Ravens are losing games. You got Josh Allen, who came through. What up, Lethal? He came through and beat Kansas City 2 weeks ago. But a lot of his games have been ho-hum. We're just celebrating him because he isn't turning over the ball as he usually does. He only has 5 right now, interception-wise. Last year, he led the league in turnovers. Derrick Henry is having just as good of a season, but he's not having the season. That's the thing. So, but check it out, Mr. Logical. This is what I went back and did, right?
All right.
So far in NFL history, there are 7 running backs that have run for 2,000 yards. They are as follows: Adrian Peterson, Jamal Lewis, Barry Sanders, Derrick Henry, Terrell Davis, Chris Johnson, and O.J. Simpson. So looking at that, right? I went back and I looked at Eric Dickerson's record-breaking season. All right. So he had 379 carries on the season. He had 200-yard games, or 200-yard games. His lowest was 38. You got Adrian Peterson back in 2012, last running back to win the MVP. He had 348 carries. Went over 200 twice. And he had a 199 as well. His lowest output, 60. So Saquon right now is on pace for 2151. And I know they have the game. I was just about to bring that up, Mike. There's the 17th game now. So, we probably won't look at that record the same. But I'm going to tell you why you probably should. Because obviously the NFL is different today than it was in yesteryear. So during that record-breaking season, Eric Dickerson had 217 receiving yards. I'm sorry, that was Adrian Peterson. Eric Dickerson had 139. But already, Saquon has 257. He's averaging 6.2 yards a carry. And just imagine, and this is what Residente pointed out yesterday, just imagine his touchdown numbers if Jalen Hurts wasn't a damn thief.
9 times he got to the 1-yard line, and he wasn't given 9 opportunities to score on the next play. Either
he would have 21 touchdowns right now, at the very least, and with 7 or 8 games left to go. So that's where Saquon separates himself from the pack. So like Josh Allen has some monumental runs this year as well. Like the run against Kansas City to close the game, the run against Indianapolis, and then, you got Lamar Jackson is just electrifying and he does what he does. So, so from that standpoint, I feel Saquon is the MVP leader right now. When it comes to Derrick Henry, we talked about this last week. Obviously I watched the game last night, and he took over that game, especially on 4th and 1, but coming into last night, he had 4 games where he didn't even have 20 carries. Philly is feeding Saquon the ball. Derrick Henry is doing great things when he has the ball, but Baltimore isn't relying on him the way that Philadelphia is relying on Saquon.
Yeah, it's going to be close. We talked about this a few years ago when Derrick Henry did go over 2,000 yards, and I felt like he was an MVP because everything that Ryan Tannehill was able to do that year was based off of the fact that there was 8 guys in the box, 8 or 9 sometimes, and he was hitting Tennessee Titan wide receivers wide open because of the play action, because of the fear of Derrick Henry.
Uh-huh.
I like what Derrick Henry is doing in Baltimore, but I don't want to downgrade the position. I think that what Saquon is doing is just has a little bit more value. I would put Derrick Henry tied for second, maybe third with Lamar, I think, as a tandem. But we all know in most sports, when you have 2 guys on the same side of the ball, even in like basketball, when you have 2 shooters,
I got one for you. How about this?
Pull votes away.
How about this? When you got 2 MVPs, you don't have one.
That makes it seem like a negative thing.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. No, they both deserve it.
It kind of happened with San Francisco last year. Like, I think people elevated Brock Purdy's MVP status, and people wanted to highlight Christian McCaffrey's. So in the attempted elevation of Purdy's stats and his impact, and the fact he's a quarterback, he was thrust into the MVP race, and then it kind of took away from CMC. I think that's the same situation here, but I'm not sure if the voting media has Jalen Hurts that high on their MVP ladder. I think people just kind of look at Hurts as a guy who's a product of circumstance where he's good enough and the team around him is stacked. But I don't think people feel like he makes great throws and decision making. But meanwhile, every year that he's starting quarterback, they're at 10 wins very early on. Like, they're not at 10 wins week 15, week 16. Like, they hit their 10 wins around week 12 consistently with Jalen Hurts, a quarterback. But he doesn't get that same kind of cachet as Brock Purdy was getting. So Saquon, by proxy, because they be kind of shitting on Jalen, is elevated. Whereas people love Lamar. Lamar's been MVP twice. He was probably the front runner for about 2 or 3 weeks, especially with Burrow's numbers and the losses. It's like, damn, he has the same numbers as Burrow, but if Burrow had different wins, but it's like, okay, well, we got to give it, get ahead of to Lamar. And people talk about Josh Allen. Josh Allen's just been good. He's had spectacular years before when he was doing everything and he was throwing the ball all over the place. I think this year he's just been a very big quality game manager with big play potential at any given time. But he hadn't had to make many of those plays. He had to make that many big throws. They've been playing like sound football. They're playing like they're preparing for the playoffs, and that's a great run. But as far as MVP, I think that's an electric award. I think the word value. I know people say, well, if you take this guy off his team, we get it. It's the most electric player award. It's MEP. We just call it MVP. You spell it Saquon.
Yeah, and I think that, when I look back at it, because I know a lot of people are going to do the whole, Saquon better than Eric Dickerson thing and all that kind of stuff. The one thing that I'll offer is that he would have done it in one less game, and he didn't have any bye weeks. So, so I'm going to give a shout out, to Eric Dickerson, holding it down. SMU's finest. But
I think Mike, hold on real quick. I think Mike said something in one of his comments. It was like, no, Cup said it. If Saquon goes over 2K, he's MVP. And you and I talked about this a few years ago.
Right.
It was like, I made the argument that a running back that goes over 2K should be considered MVP. And you were like, why does he have to do that? And our back and forth banter was essentially they set it up to be a quarterback award. Every year. I believe it was last year, something like, I think Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, what's the boy down in Jacksonville? Trevor Lawrence. I think even CJ Stroud had better MVP odds than Christian McCaffrey, like preseason, even after like a couple of weeks. Because it's set up to be a quarterback award.
Right.
Because by default, it has been recently. So you're like, why does the running back have to go over 2,000? It's like, when you're at a disadvantage because one group is elevated higher, you might have to be a little bit more exceptional than the other person who already has a head start. So if you're racing the guy has a 30-meter head start on you and it's a 100-meter race, you have to be more spectacular than that guy when the gun goes off. Is it fair? No. But if you show that you are, like if Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, if they both finish with 17 to 1,800 yards rushing, 15 to 16, 17 touchdowns, there shouldn't be a quarterback in the league not named Lamar above them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying.
100%.
That's all I'm saying. Because even if you think it's Henry, you think it's Saquon, it's definitely not any other quarterback than Lamar. And I think, like I said, Lamar and Derrick being on the same team is about to get cold. It's not going to be throwing the ball as much. I think Henry's going to get that rock more. Same thing with Saquon. So,
well, to your point, even if you go back to last year, I felt Christian McCaffrey was MVP last year because none of the quarterbacks, in my opinion, were that spectacular. Like they had numbers, but they didn't play. Like when you watched them, it just didn't look MVP-ish. And of course, they tried to play hot potato with the MVP, giving it to quarterback after quarterback every week, depending on wins and losses. Where, first of all, let me throw this disclaimer out there. Just because I said I think Saquon is the MVP today does not mean that if he's not the MVP in week 16 and I say Saquon's not the MVP, I didn't flip-flop. I changed my mind with new information. So let's throw that out there. Now, second of all, Lethal, my defensive player of the year is TJ Watt right now. I think
rookie of the year.
I think that sorry, my bad. That's a rookie of the year. So Quinion Mitchell, that's easy. Corner from the Eagles. That's super easy. And there's others in the conversation, but he's just the best of the bunch.
In a passing league, I give credit to the running back because essentially we're going to talk about, as his MVP stuff. I want to point out his
hold on. Actually, I just had a thought. Sorry. Actually, no. Yeah. I'm going to reverse that. And I'm going to say Jarrett versus the defensive rookie of the year. Not because he went to Florida State.
Yeah. So with Saquon and even Derrick Henry, but the main thing with Saquon is that Tennessee Titans aren't looking great. But Baltimore's always had a great run game. They just added a bigger gun to their run game fight. The Giants basically imploding, coupled with the fact that the clips from Hard Knocks, I think the clips from Hard Knocks are what people are seeing a lot of because we talk about a lot of MVP voters. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I don't know how many voters really break down tape. Especially we talk about this with the NBA, with the MVP. I think they get a list. That list is probably an Excel doc with different stats on it.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing those clips of the play, like the chairman of the Giants in the office with the GM who decided to pay Daniel Jones $40 million and made the comment, I don't know if people want a $40 million quarterback handing the ball off to a $12 million running back. When this guy says, if Saquon goes to Philly, I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night. And then one of your random assistants says, are we sure no one's going to pay him this money? So it just sets this tone for Saquon to be a guy people like already.
Right.
And then the Giants basically publicly with cameras around knowingly shitted on him. And then he comes out and he goes exactly to the team that the owner was afraid of. And he's doing what he's doing. And then he did it for, I think his money looks like $37 million, 26 guaranteed.
Yeah, that same owner and GM also had a kid tell them to draft Jaden Daniels too.
Yeah, that's so. Like you bring, and we talk about this all the time. Like, yo, I shouldn't feel like I'm smarter than the GM, but when the GM's kid is like, yo, they could have probably, realistically, if they try hard enough, they could have moved up Daniel Jones in the offseason, taken Jaden Daniels at 6, kept Saquon. What does their year look like right now? And it's not even like a crazy hypothetical.
It could have happened. It should have happened.
And it could have happened like that. Like not even like a lot of effort. Just move Daniel Jones. Maybe you'd have to jump the 1 Or
Yeah,
you'd
you
have to
probably
trade
have to trade up. Yeah.
And I don't know if Washington, maybe they wouldn't have done it, but maybe you could have done better for your team. Maybe you lose a couple of games for the end of the year. Like, hey,
Hell, you could have grabbed Bo Nix.
they could have sat some guys earlier and maybe ensured their draft position was two. All I'm saying is that they're doing it now when it's too late.
Doing it too late. Yeah.
They're doing it now, hoping that they can get Shador. They're doing it now, hoping that you get Dylan Gabriel, you get Cam Ward. Like now you're hoping. So now you're behind the eight ball. And I think seeing the discombobulation that's occurring in East Rutherford and the guy in Philadelphia is causing it to happen, like that shows more value than even what he's doing on the field.
Mm-hmm. See, Cups, and it depends on who you believe, because the Giants are saying that they offered him that deal. Saquon is not confirming that they offered him that deal.
No, the guy in that clip said, "Are you sure no one's going to offer him $12 million?" So that implies that they offered him less than 12, and he asked for 12. Because Saquon said some stuff like he only asked for a couple million more.
Right.
So when the guy, I forgot who it was, I want to give him credit. When he's talking to Joe Shane, the GM, he said, "Are you sure no one's going to give him 12?" So that means the Giants did not offer him 12. They offered him less than 12.
Well, I know last year they offered him, it was real paltry, and he had incentives that was basically going to get him to the finish line.
Yeah,
and they were unrealistic.
Weird deal last year.
Yeah.
He had a franchise tag. He had a franchise tag that was going to probably pay him like 10-9 or 10-8. He took a 1-year deal that was going to pay him like up to 11-8, but he needed like 1,300 yards rushing. He needed this many games played. It was like these incentives that he probably wasn't going to get behind the offensive line. So I think like the franchise tag would have worked. He probably should, if he would have taken it 2 years in a row, he would have got a pretty good deal. But they didn't want to give him the money. And he said in many interviews, like they didn't even talk to him. He was like, the only conversation he really had was that one that you guys see on Hard Knocks. That clip that he said, we're going to let you test the market, which makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you have it. We're both on board with Saquon leading the MVP race right now. More to follow. So, of course, this is your holiday out there. Saying y'all going to eat some dry-ass bird and I guess, party and play some games, eat some pie and all that good stuff while I'm sitting there eating my crab legs, hoping that Jerry World opens up and swallows the Cowboys and the Giants. So we got some games. We got some games up in here. We got the Bears at the Lions. So, Mr. Logical,
I'm listening.
I know that you are our resident Caleb Williams critic. So you giving them any chance against the Lions on Thursday? Caleb football?
Listen, I'll admit as the season goes on and I get more familiar, like it says, the facts change, so does my opinion. Maybe he'll be better. He's definitely going to need a new offensive strategist somewhere in the building. Someone's going to have to really devise a plan that's going to work for him, keep him getting hit, keep him getting sacked, and keeping it from being on his shoulders if they win or lose. Because right now, the way they're playing like we're riding or dying with Caleb. And it's like, no, you need to help them so you don't die. Just ride. Like, There's a way you could have done that. Like, you had plenty of opportunity to ensure that this guy doesn't just suffer like at the hands of another poor Chicago coach. You saw that video clip I sent you today with each one of those coaches explaining why they kicked field goals on second down and overtime, and they sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
In 11 years apart. Because it's NFL, you got to give them a chance. But schematically, I just feel like Detroit is going to employ more weapons deliberately. It won't be accidental. Like, if the play is called for Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's the play. That's Jared's first read. That's the blocking. Everything is going to set up to where the play we called gets this guy open. If it's for Jahmyr Gibbs, the play we called is to get him on the edge. It's like Detroit is just more deliberate with their offensive play calling. I think they're more deliberate I think they embody the energy of the coach. I think the way people treat Jared Goff like he's some kind of afterthought, like, he played in the Super Bowl. He has playoff wins, playoff experience. Like he's done quality things in this league, and people just treat him like he's some kind of bum. Like he's rarely an MVP conversation. If you do bring him up, people laugh at you. Like, are you not watching football? So Ben Johnson's with, but sometimes you need that. Sometimes you just simply need. We talk about coaches. Jim Harbaugh is the reason Mike Singletary never got another head coaching job, because he took the same roster, the same money, same ownership group, and took it to a Super Bowl. He just made it work. He's like, you know what? You got a couple of tight ends here. You got this quarterback that runs well, got a cannon of an arm. Cool, you're going to throw a lot of short passes to tight ends, deep routes to this guy who runs a 4-2, and then you're going to do a lot of RPO stuff. And we're going to win football games. We did it with Alex Smith, and we're going to do it with College. So it's like sometimes a coach just puts guys in position where to be open, because there's only so much space these guys can cover. It's like 5 dudes in coverage. You got 5 dudes running routes. Somebody's going to get open. And if you set it up deliberately, like I saw Will route last night or the other night, Dallas Goedert was like man-to-man coverage. It's like, all right, cool. If you see man-to-man and the tight ends inside on the trips, just run the wheel out of that. That way you run the guys up the field. This corner who's covering your tight end has to get through all this trash to get over. And Jalen just overthrew it. Sometimes it's just that simple. And I think that when you have coaches who understand, like, it's that simple. All we got to do is get the ball to our playmakers, because there's plenty of space. We talk about it, 52.5 yards wide. It's only so much space these safeties and these corners can cover. You block it well up front. You scheme it up, you're good to go. I think Detroit does that consistently every year. It's at home, indoors, pressure game, short week, rookie quarterback, first Thanksgiving game, coach on a hot seat. Like, it just, without knowing anything about football, if I told you the Bears situation, 5 straight losses, or the Detroit situation, like 9 straight wins or 7 straight wins, like, who are you taking?
Well, so, I mean, I know you mentioned giving the Bears a punching chance because this is the NFL.
It's the NFL.
You do that because I ain't giving them no chance. You know what I'm saying? And before I even get to that, I don't think Jared Goff was ever the MVP this season. I think I wanted him to be the MVP, but looking at it rationally, I don't think, because Josh Allen at that point was on 1 interception. Lamar's been doing what he's doing all season. So Jared Goff might have got in the conversation, but I don't know.
If you got 5, because they had Mahomes leading the MVP odds, Vegas odds, up until like week 6 or 7, and he had pedestrian-like numbers.
Okay, Mike. Okay. Well, this is how I look at it. When I look at the Chicago Bears, I see a young team. I see a young team with a bad coach. I see a young team with a bad coach, a young team, and a diva wide receiver. I see a team with a coach. I can't even remember all that I said. I was going to try to do it again. But also their defense that was vaunted. We talked about how they never gave up 21 points in the last 20 or so games. That defense is falling apart now because that offense has been leaving them on the field. Can't do that against Detroit.
These guys are making business decisions. It's like, I've seen it at the youth football level, high school level. Is like, I'm done. Like, people are done. Like, DJ Moore is a human. He's frustrated. Maybe he's not expressing it right, but he's out there doing cardio. I'm your number 1 wide receiver. They say coaches script the first 15 plays. I'm going to start to call that cap, because I don't believe it.
It works for Shanahan.
Calvin Ridley doesn't get targets in the first half. I think Malik Neighbors wasn't getting targets. It has been games where Justin doesn't get targets.
Give them the ball, right?
That's what I'm saying. So, like, I don't give a damn what the coverage is. At some point, we just got to go max protect and get Justin Jefferson the ball. We got to get DJ Moore the ball. We got to get the ball to Calvin Ridley. We got to get the ball to Drake London. It's like, I don't care about but they're not getting that. They're not making that happen. Even if you got to force it, hell, those screens on first downs. Like, just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. And I don't.
That's what the Bears have been doing lately with the offensive coordinator change. They've been doing a lot more common sense football, But also, when I'm trying to look at this, the reason that I brought up them being a young team initially is when you look at the last 2 weeks. The block field goal against Green Bay, the game that they had under their control until overtime, and then they just suddenly fell apart. One, you can't play
the Hail Mary is
the Hail Mary.
It's also lingering, yeah.
Right. So the point that I'm trying to make, that's a young team. Their leader is young.
Coach.
At what? No, I know. No, I know. But at what point does a young team become not reachable, especially by that coach?
Because what do you have to? We talked about this before. The beginning of the game is coaches, it's X's and O's. End of the game is Jimmy's and Joe's. But you have to be in tune. You can't make these changes in the middle of the year with offensive strategy, offensive identity. That's what the offseason's for. These guys start working on the upcoming season in March. So if you're telling me in October and November you didn't iron out what you saw in March, I talk about this all the time. My son, first football year, my youngest son, he's 2016, 7 years old. The practices we were having before with one of the coaches, he's like, your son, he was going to play in the 85-pound team. My son was probably like 77, 78 pounds. He was one of the bigger kids first year playing football. He's like, he looks like he'll be a good running back. They'll probably have him playing running back. I remember the team last year from the 60s, looks like he'll be playing running back. Right. The first day of practice, this kid named Jai came out there, long hair, and they did sprints. And I thought he was on a bike, how much faster he was than every other kid out there. And I was like, you know what? Even I know I love my son. But if I'm picking a running back, starting, I'm going with that kid. And my son was going to be the backup, which ended up being. I saw that first day from the sideline. Me and his dad, I just met, like, who's this kid with the hair? They're like, oh, this is my son. Hey, man, how you doing? I like him. My son was going to be starting running back. I don't think so now. That was our first conversation. So it's like, if you are an organization, you can't see that our guard can't block.
Right.
In a helmet and T-shirt, you need to remedy that.
Right.
You need to bring in another tight end. Do you need 7 wide receivers or 4 tight ends, one that can block? Do you need to get a tight end or a guard that used to be tight end in high school or went to college as a tight end, and then you can bring him in as your extra? Like, you have to figure that stuff out in March. Chicago's never did it. And now it's everybody else's problem when you pick to go to the Super Bowl. Not you, but people picking to go to the Super Bowl and buying tickets.
Well, I mean, so as Mike brought up, the Lions are pretty banged up. They got players missing, but Aaron Glenn will still be there. And when it comes down to the X's and O's, who am I going to trust? Aaron Glenn or this guy that's been offensive coordinator for 2 weeks that got fired by Carolina before this? Then when you add that equation up, who do you trust more to lead the Jimmies and Joes through the rest of the game? So I'm going with the Lions. I'll give the Bears some respect and say that they'll cover, but so due to Detroit's injuries, I'll call it something along the lines of 30-23.
I say getting your ass kicked on Thanksgiving as a Bear. You're like, I came all the way up to Michigan for this.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been at home. I think the score, like, I'm going to say 30-17, late touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But Detroit's going to be in control of the game. Jared Goff is going to be able to get turkey leg. Jamar Gibbs going to get a turkey leg. Penei Sewell is probably going to catch a touchdown. He will get a turkey leg. And then Caleb will do some post-game interview, and I think he's already faded. I thought he was going to be like a star, where like cameras were always in his face, and he was just going to be. But the team. I think all the preseason hype and the pre-draft hype and what it's looked like during the season, it has to be a hit to his confidence. And I don't know who's in the building that's going to be able to like remedy that.
Right. So yeah, that's game number 1. So then for game number 2, we gotta go to the shithole that I mentioned earlier. Jerry World, where we saw it is a shithole. You remember that video a couple weeks ago with the sheet
Shit
metal
falling off the roof?
Yeah, falling off the roof. Get it together, Jerry. Your team is falling apart. Your stadium's falling apart.
That is $1 billion building.
And sadly, I can't even go no further because even though they are going to hell, apparently they're taking my team with them. But they got the Giants coming in. The Giants maybe minus Tommy DeVito. Sounds like he's got a forearm injury. Coach Dayball isn't quite sure if he'll play or not.
Man, he's done. Dayball start looking for new.
And I brought that up a few weeks ago. Yeah, so at the time that we had the conversation, I didn't fully believe it. I just thought hey, this is a possibility. Not because he's wrong, but just because the Giants have a quick trigger. They're trying to get it right. You got people like Shedeur and Cam Ward in this draft. So, but then when I think about it, I'm like, nah, Dayball, I can't defend this, dog, because you're the one that benched him, sent him on his way.
I think they went with DeVito because he's a hometown kid.
He knows the system.
They can get a spark. The system is still the Baltimore League neighbors. That's the system. I don't know what Coach O'Toole our system. Our system is throw it to the wide open guy, which Daniel Jones wasn't doing. Like that clip, like the plays I talked about last week, that 4th and 3, and I showed it to you. Do the wide open in the seam, wide open on an out route. He threw the same route early in that game too, on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I would have gone with Drew Lock just for the experience factor, but it was a home game.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted the home crowd. Because at the end of the day, right now, it's all business for the Giants. It's business in how do we keep a very dedicated fan base. Living in the Northeast, because I've been here since 2014, and the Phillies had a few good years. Obviously, that Super Bowl. I think the Giants have had basic, mediocre average years, a couple of good years, but for the most part, I think 1 or 2 playoff visits, but nothing major, nothing really post-Eli. The Sixers fans, Knicks fans, Brooklyn, these fans in this region are dedicated, and it's a large crop of people. It's millions of people in this area, so you got to sell out the stadium. You still try to win games, but when you put DeVito in at home, you're just trying to fill seats. You're trying to get that last bit of $14 beer sold so you can pay off whatever the buyout is to Daniel Jones, whatever you owe him, and then move forward. And it looks like they're tanking. Sucks, but I would have started Drew Lock anyway because I think the fans still would have showed up because you can still yank, Drew Lock at halftime and put DeVito in. But you start DeVito, you get the crowd. Dayball, he's probably in the boat because of Hard Knocks and Saquon and Philly, which I'll go back to. The best thing for the Giants to do is clean house. You can see the ineptitude in your management team as an owner who literally said to the GM, I don't want to see him go to Philly. And he goes to Philly and he's killing it. It's like, dog, I gave you what not to do. Nothing pisses me off more when I tell somebody, don't do this. Don't say this to me. Don't bring this kind of problems with me.
Yeah.
But the fact that occurred, Giants season is done. It's wrecked. Baker Mayfield out here doing a Johnny Manziel, Tommy DeVito move. Dallas might be, but this is the thing. Dallas is about to do what Atlanta does, and play good enough to get the 11th overall pick.
Well,
and none of your game breakers are there, and you be like, I should get this guard, but you won't because you're at 11. You're gonna get the wide receiver, and then the guard's gonna go 12 to Washington, and then they're going to lead the league in rushing the following year. Something crazy like that. It happens every year.
Yep. So the Cowboys, obviously are the bane of my existence. And, for reasons like last week, and coming
Why
off
didn't
of,
they go for 2?
That's what I said. You know what I mean? But
they didn't watch. Dan Quinn needs to watch the show.
Well,
listen,
you know what I mean?
My favorite team. You coach Mike's favorite team. You need to watch our show because we would have told you under 22 seconds left, go for 2, win or lose.
Well, not even just from that standpoint as well, but your kicker had already missed an extra point and a field goal earlier. So it wasn't, just go for 2. But Dallas, as Mike let us know, the pass rush is back. Micah Parsons came through dominating last week, got hit in the knee, got a little scary for a second, but he came back and wrecked, have it all over the game. These two teams played on a Thursday night a little while ago. The Giants lost that game 20-15 because of what Mr. Logical alluded to. Daniel Jones just wasn't throwing it to the right person. And when he was throwing it to the right person, he wasn't throwing it the right way. He would lob it when there should be a little spice to it. He would take the spice off when it should have spice. It was just a mess. He's a mess. So get that out the way. Tommy DeVito comes in last week. They score 7 points, which took their average for this season down to a whopping 14.8 points per game.
Saquon Barkley outgained the whole New York Giants offense by himself.
Not only that, but Rico Dowdle.
253.
Rico Dowdle is coming off his career high. 19 carries for 86 yards. He's turning a corner. The offense is turning a corner because they're running the ball. They're playing Dallas Cowboy football. But then that man always got to be talking, don't he? Everybody just chilling, thinking about their nasty-ass cranberries.
Man, and really shitting on Thanksgiving.
And he's sitting up here talking about there's the extension for Mike McCarthy isn't off the table. Jerry, what the hell are you talking about, bro?
Yo, I'm telling you, man, listen, everybody needs an OG in their corner. Jerry thinks he's an OG. He needs a silent partner.
So, it just makes me think, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to tell the Cowboys how to get right.
We all know.
What up,
We all know. I think Jerry's a good owner. I think you obviously tell he cares about the team because there's probably some owners out there whose net worth might be $19 billion and they're 30% owner of the team.
What up, E-Money?
And they're like, yeah, but Jerry, he is the star in his mind.
Yeah.
So
yeah, in his mind. But
I'll pick him to win because they're playing the Giants and Brian.
I just can't get a read on this game either way because it's two crappy teams. One that got lucky, one that hasn't got lucky yet. So I guess I'll just roll with the tradition. On the nastiest holiday food of the year, I'm gonna take Dallas.
What? Man, I'm about to put you on timeout.
And then we go to Lambeau Field, where it's going to be a little chilly outside. The Miami Dolphins have lost their last 12 games when it's been 42 degrees or lower. Tua Tagovailoa on his own, 0-7 when it's 40 degrees and below. Game time temperature, 26 with a low of 23. So I know Mr. Logical is going to get up on here and repeat some of the same things that I said, but I'm going to throw you a bone here. Pause.
Okay, here we go. Pause indeed.
I'm taking Miami to win this game.
You're out of your mind.
I expect a whole lot of A-Chan. I expect a whole lot of screams.
Faye, turn off the Wi-Fi. Faye, I know you watch it. Turn off the Wi-Fi.
Hey.
Mike is tripping.
Don't be invoking her name. She'll do it.
Listen, first, the Thanksgiving jabs you've been taking throughout the show, I'm appalled. First of all, sweet potato pie, yams, greens, stuffing, turkey. You just got to.
Down here we call it dressing, but go ahead.
Listen.
Down here, around here.
You gotta put the butter. You gotta put the butter under the skin before you do the turkey.
You're talking about desserts and shit, though. What I'm saying? That don't count.
I'm doing my double stuff Oreo brownies. Yo, it's gonna be off the meat rack. That's how I get down. And then, I let it slide a couple times, and you threw another one. They gonna hit me with this Miami when it's cold. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
because now they have the running backs to do the job. This
Those
is,
running backs were there too.
what I'm
They
saying,
just fast.
and on
Fast.
top of that,
Drive a Lamborghini through the snow. What are you, Post
and
Malone?
and on top of that, and on top of that, I'm trying to trust Jordan Love too. That's asking a little bit too much.
I trust him more. You know what? I bet you this is going to happen. They can watch the playoff game from Kansas City last year. Granted, it was negative 26.
Hopefully, nobody loses their fingers this time.
Which is a 52-degree difference. They think about like a 26 degrees, and you play the game 52 degrees cooler. That's crazy in and of itself.
Yeah, they got an 8-can and a cheetah.
Kansas City, a lot of those guys, they wear sleeves. I don't think Andy Reid wiped his nose the whole game. I can see the Green Bay guys doing that intimidation thing. We talked about this when I told you about Korea. The American soldier stands at the DMZ. He stands at the middle by himself, 12 hours a day, no cold weather gear, standing across the North Korean soldiers. Just that kind of like intimidation is like, this dude is really standing out here in this weather with no cold weather gear. So when Jordan Love comes out there, no sleeves, Dobbs out there, no sleeves, Jacobs out there, no sleeves, just out there playing in the cold, and Tua's out there in a turtleneck, you're going to see the difference.
Yeah, I will say during that playoff game, Mike McDaniel and Tua wanted no part to that. Like I remember very early in the game.
Red.
Yeah, there was a play early in the game. It was a drop pass, and you could just see Tua like it's like instead of you see Aaron Rodgers the way he reacts when a receiver. Tua wasn't like that. Tua was just like,
oh, looks like we're putting.
Why we got to be here? You know what I mean? Mike McDaniel was sitting over there like, damn, it would still be nice to be hanging out with Shanahan these days.
But the craziest thing is that, like, I have one of the parents, that's, he used to be one of my son's coaches, and his son and Joe on the same team. They played lacrosse, and lacrosse was starting like the winter. We played games at night, and I was standing next to him. He's from Jersey, and he's like this. I'm like, you're good. He's like, I hate. He looked at me. He's like, I hate the cold. I'm like, you from here? He's like, I still hate it. I hate it so much. He's like, I'm wearing an electrical heated vest right now. I was like, what? He was like, look, it was like a little emblem. It was like illuminated. He was like, I'm wearing it was like a heated vest. I'm like, y'all couldn't get those in Miami, but in that game. So, like I said, I just don't have any. If they had a bruising running back, or they used the fullback more, like use check or something like that in San Francisco, where they just kind of let the big uglies kind of control the game. Miami doesn't do that. So Miami, they need guys running deep routes, balls in the wind, balls in the cold, guys getting hit, slammed to the ground, and not catching the ball. Like when guys always check out when like they run a deep route and it's incomplete. But if they catch it, they get that adrenaline boost, they get right back in the huddle. It's going to be a lot of guys running deep routes getting hit.
Well, I don't know. In that Kansas City playoff game, we were like -30 with the wind chill. So it's not going to be that cold from that standpoint. Well, yeah, but I will have you know.
Isn't that cold either.
I will have you know, the month of this holiday that you're celebrating, Tua has been the best quarterback in the NFL since his return. So when I look at this, he's completed 77.
It's abnormally warm. I was wearing.
Nah, don't give me climate change. This is football.
Okay, holler at me on Friday. When Tua goes 17 for 31 and 2 picks.
Nah, what I was going to say was, he's completed 77% of his passes
on the field.
Only Patrick Mahomes ties him in passing touchdowns this month. The only person with more passing yards, which is 23, is Jared Goff. So Tua's playing at another level. They need this for their playoff chances. This ain't the game that's going to get them.
Yeah, but we talked about that pre. Like I said, I'm not dumping on Miami. I'm just
I'm
thinking logically. I picked them to go 13-4 because even the late season games, they have a lot of dome games. This was a game I was like, oh, November in Wisconsin, that's a loss. If everybody's healthy, that's a loss. They could have come into this game undefeated, and I still would have picked that as a loss.
That's hilarious.
I think that just would be a smart money bet.
All right, so you're going Green Bay. I'm going Miami.
Correct.
All right. So, of course, that leads us to the fuckery. You know what I'm saying? So before,
This is what you asked for.
yeah.
Before y'all
So
get mad and be on the blogs and be on Facebook talk about how this happened, how they get, y'all asked for more teams in the playoff. Me and Mike had this conversation 2 years ago before they even like really approved it. It was like, if they go to 12 teams, you're just gonna get 4 or 5 SEC schools in, no matter what.
right. And this is the thing with a team like Bama. They're going to get the excuse, and yes, it is an excuse. As I would always say, there's a thin line between an excuse and a reason. So Alabama's going to have the excuse of having a tough schedule. The problem is that if you have a tough schedule, you got to beat some of the tough teams on your schedule. Now, granted, they beat Georgia, so I don't want to be fully disrespectful here. Not trying to go there, but they lost to Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? They lost to Oklahoma, who needed to beat them to go to a bowl game. They lost to Vanderbilt, who, even though they are Texas's best win, you just saw them lose at Death Valley last weekend. You saw them get beat down by South Carolina. So let's not get crazy here. But the problem is, Mr. Logical.
Oh, yeah. You told me you have like reason that a logical person like me is going to align with.
No, not necessarily that you're going to align with. I'm just saying that, like,
I love the logic.
No, I'm just saying that, like, the reasons that Bama's going to make it. You know what I mean? And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to SEC, just those letters being spoken in unison, because it makes you think that it means more, something is better. But it doesn't mean that, because when we go back and look at this, let's just kind of flesh this out for a second. People were happy and impressed that Ole Miss was beating up on Wake Forest. Remember when Tennessee beat Chattanooga to start the season and everybody gave, what's his name, Nico the Heisman?
Nico 8, yeah. I don't know his last name. We call him Nico 8.
Maieva. You know what I'm saying? But they did that. When I look at the SEC, yes, you have your wins like Georgia over Clemson. That was a big win, especially when they took them to the woodshed. You can't knock it. But then you're going to turn around and tell me that's okay because a team like Arkansas beats Tennessee. So that means that the SEC is tough. Or that means Tennessee wasn't as good. There's an alternative to this. Who did Alabama lose to? Besides Vanderbilt, besides Oklahoma, which I shouldn't even have to say because that should be enough. But there are other losses to number 8 Tennessee, whose other loss besides Arkansas is to number 7. Bama beat number 7. So when I look at this, let's just hypothetically go down this road real quick. Let's say SMU and Indiana lose this upcoming weekend. So Indiana's number 10, they're 10-1, Boise's at 11, and SMU's at number 9. So SMU hosts Cal. Not likely they're going to lose that game, but let's just say they do for the sake of this conversation. Let's say Indiana somehow loses to Purdue. It's a rivalry to old Oaken Bucket. And let's say Boise loses to Oregon State. So where Bama is right now in this ranking at number 13, who am I putting in before Bama? Who would you get away with that is behind Bama right now, putting them in front of Bama as we look at this here? So, like I was saying,
SMU number 9. Playoff ranking.
Yep, SMU number 9, Indiana 10, Boise 11. So I'll take those off the table because those aren't realistic. But let's say number 8, Tennessee. They play their in-state rival from Nashville, Vanderbilt, who beat Alabama.
13, 14, 15 should be 17, 18, and 19. Because what you're telling me is that the top, there is a upper echelon SEC school, Texas. There's a two middle of the road teams, Georgia, Tennessee, and then there's 3 teams that are on the outside looking in of their own conference. So if they're on the outside looking at their own conference, they should be in the outside of this playoff bracket. So give me Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I'll swap it with Tulane, Iowa State, and BYU. Just move them up because I can't dictate what SEC schools do when I play in the Big 12, when my team is in the Big 10, when my team is in the ACC. So telling me that all the effort that I'm putting in my school, in my conference, is I got it, and I get it. Like I said it earlier, when the quarterback MVP race, if you're the running back, you get a 30-yard head start. I get it. But if you have a third loss, I have made up and closed that and surpassed that gap. You cannot be on the outside looking in of your own conference and be on the inside of the championship for the country. It's just that simple. I don't care how good your conference is.
But that's the difference.
You cannot just continue, just be like, you know what? I'm not in contention to win my own conference, but you're going to put me in a tournament to win the country's tournament.
And that's because, college football and the NFL operate differently. In the NFL, we have these tiebreakers that say, regardless of what your name is, this is how we work this out, versus a system of subjectiveness
and that's fine, but like I'm speaking subjectively, it's like, listen,
theoretically,
you're on the outside of your own conference. You shouldn't be on the inside. Like
I know, hold on, check me out.
As it all pans out, like I get these matchups are going to happen, but as far as right now, if you're Alabama, if you're Ole Miss, if you're especially Alabama and Ole Miss, because they were in the proverbial catbird seat and had very bad games 3 days ago. It wasn't as if they had a couple of losses early and then they rallied, and they're bouncing back and they just won game number 8 and they're moving up. They just moved from inside the top 10 with bad losses. Jackson Dart giving the ball away like free turkeys on Thursday. And then
gotta give them away for free.
And Miller was doing the same thing. Oklahoma had 50 rushes for 250 yards. Granted, that's 5 yards a clip, but it's like it wasn't like they were busting 70-yard runs over again. They only scored 24 points. That's not a lot of points in a college football game. But Alabama only scored 3. So how is a team that just gets dominated? When we talk about the Vanderbilt game, their time of possession was like minus 25 minutes in a 60-minute football game. That shows that they were being dominated. How can you get dominated in your conference games and then you tell me you're in the position to compete for the title of the country? That's all I'm saying. Is like, if you can't do that, I get that the SEC is tougher, but it's one thing. Like Georgia lost games. They were down 28 to Alabama, came back, had the long pass to Ryan Williams that flipped the game again. But they battled back. They had the game against Kentucky that people probably felt they should have lost. But other than that, 9-2, dominated Texas. It's like they have the real bounce back. I think people are trying to sell us on this Bama bounce back. Like we didn't just see what happened 72 hours ago. Like, once again, famous phrase, don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's right. And I'm not knocking Alabama. I'm just talking about the way it's ranked. I'm good with them being in contention, but their contention has to start behind other people that have lapped them. You have to give people credit for the games that they're playing their schedule. Everybody can't play their games from Florida to Texas. In that special region of the country, people have to play games other places. They have to play against other teams. Everyone can't play an SEC schedule, and everyone that plays an SEC schedule can't get credit for the top teams of the SEC.
Well, thinking about a team like Texas A&M, for example, who's number 20, last week they were in the catbird seat, as you said, to get to the SEC championship game. Now they got to win to get in, but they lost to Auburn. Okay, it's the SEC. It's tough. Cal, who only won 1 game or 2 games in the ACC this year, lost to Florida State, by the way, the one FBS team to lose to Florida State, went into Jordan-Hare and won. So, I get the time difference. It was early in the season versus now, but You can't be the best at the end, but you weren't the best in the front. So you can't have it both ways.
Like I said, but case in point, that's fine. But the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 SEC schools that are from 13 down to 20 should be 20, 20, 19, 18, 17, and 16.
But there's a problem with that.
Or down to 21, excuse me.
So BYU lost their last 2 games. So they're 9-2, but those 2 both happened in the last 2 weeks. One of them was to, no matter how good I think they are, it was a team that was 3-6. That's who they lost their first game to. They lost out in Tempe this past weekend to the Sun Devils. You got the Sun Devils right there.
But once again, BYU isn't on the inside track of the championship.
No, I know, but you were saying that you would put them where Bama was, though. That's what I'm responding to.
I'd bring them all down, but what I'm saying is when
you're who fills the gaps then? Like, are you just moving teams up based on record?
I'm leaving 14 and 15 blank. I'm starting the rest of these dudes at 17 now. So 14, 15, 16 is TBD, and everybody else is 17 down. Because there's honestly, would you put South Carolina in the championship tournament in the bracket?
I would not, because they lost to Bama.
Would you put Ole Miss in the bracket?
I would not, because they lost to Kentucky.
Would you put Bama in the bracket?
If I had to.
Would you put Arizona? You sound like Q. Would you put Arizona State in the bracket?
I'm
more apt to put Arizona
as is, yes. As is, yes. If they lose next week, no.
That's what I'm saying. But these other teams just lost. They lose, and we talked about. Me and you had an in-depth conversation 2 years ago about how they leave teams like Missouri and Texas A&M in the top 25. So at the end of the year, this is like when it was 4 teams. It's like at the end of the year, when Bama beats a team like a 7-4 Ole Miss that's ranked 24 for some reason after, when they beat these teams early in the year, they leave them ranked. And then at the end of the year, the argument is like Georgia and Alabama should be in the top 4 teams because they have 6 top 25 wins. Well, Texas A&M probably shouldn't have been 13 the year that they, it's always set up to where at the end of the year, you're going to sell out the stadiums no matter what. You're going to get the creme de la creme into these tournaments no matter what. Stop making it seem as if the first 9, 10, 11 games don't matter. They matter. You got to give them credit when they succeed, and you got to knock them down when they lose. I can be a teacher and love a student. Like, listen, you got 90s, 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 but your last 2 weeks, 70s. I can't be like, you're still an A+ student. You're not. You got a couple of 70s. I got to bring you down. You got a couple more opportunities to get hundreds to bring it back up. But as of right now, you're trending more to the B student versus the A+ student. There's nothing wrong with that reality. But they keep giving these SEC schools this new set of rules that they rate them by. And it's like, why?
And see, but that's the problem, though, right? Because to win an argument or to have an argument, you have to show that you can hold up your side of the argument, right?
Correct.
So from that standpoint, right now, absolutely correct. Bama shouldn't get in. Ole Miss shouldn't get in. South Carolina shouldn't get in. So on and so forth. The problem is that the other teams don't always hold up their end and win their games so that we don't have to have these conversations.
Honestly, I get what you're saying, but this Alabama,
it's the same thing. When we see bad calls, you say don't let the game come down to the refs.
The Georgia conversation versus Indiana happened last week before Indiana lost a game.
Because you have to.
But that's what I'm saying.
I don't agree with it.
No losses yet. The conversation last week before Indiana played their game against Ohio State was a 2-loss Georgia team was better than the undefeated Indiana. And I get that Indiana still lost their game. I'm not knocking. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. But they were already planting the seeds saying that Indiana wasn't better than Georgia, making it mandatory for Indiana to beat Ohio State in order to change that narrative.
And then when
So
they do lose to Ohio
and
State,
when they lose, now everyone's like, "See,
now they're overrated."
Now they're overrated. But then
you rated them.
Check it out. Let's check this out. Now imagine you hear this, Frank. Indiana beats Ohio State last weekend. The narrative to get Ohio State back in the playoffs is Indiana's better than we thought. They're a well-coached team. We thought that this coach couldn't come from JMU and come to the Big Ten. Big Ten is probably the second best conference in football. And Ohio State, you mean to tell me a 2-loss Ohio State team isn't better than a 2-loss BYU? The conversation is never on merit. The conversation is based on who do we want to see in January. And that's it. And that's why Bama's in it. There's no reason Bama should be in the conversation because it's not the Nick Saban year where they lost their 2 games on kicks. They got that ass kicked twice, a month apart. It's not like they had a bad stretch. It's up. They got their ass kicked. Then they have some mediocre games. Then they get that ass kicked again. It's cool.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Just admit you got your ass kicked and stop clamoring for a position a title you don't need. You don't deserve. You didn't earn. You didn't earn an opportunity, unlike previous years. Last year, I felt they earned it.
100%.
I was with Florida State. I thought it sucked for Florida State, but I was like, well, if we're going to go with the whole concept of, well, this is a whole team and, SEC champ and so forth and so on, I'm with it.
But that's where that comes in because just like we were talking about, or I was talking about earlier, the difference between college football and the NFL with how we do tiebreakers and all that kind of stuff. But also
appreciate that, Mike.
But what also happens is that we get these thoughts in our minds and you allow people to paint a narrative of, is this best or most deserving? You know what I'm saying? Like in an NFL model, there is no deserving. There is no should have been. Joe Burrow should get to be in the playoffs this year. He's not.
Everybody that I talked to picked the city over Tampa Bay when it's Tom Brady versus Mahomes, and they got beat by 22 points.
Right. And
no one's going to deny Kansas City an opportunity to the playoffs the following year because that TCU got mollywopped on national TV and people turned the game off. But that's why they're afraid of it. And I get it. The problem is all the people in the room, I guarantee you, have more ties financially and allegiances to the figurehead universities of college football. Because if you look at the rankings, look at the statuses of these teams: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee. Those top 8, they rank bells. We got Peyton Manning. You got everybody that's ever played at Georgia, Miami, legacy, Notre Dame, legacy, Penn State, legacy, Texas, legacy, Ohio State, legacy, Oregon, legacy. SMU, Indiana, Boise State, Ohio, Arizona State don't ring the same. So how do we fix that? We get Bama in there, we slide Clemson in there, and we have what looks like a fair opportunity because they're going to throw Boise State in. And maybe whoever wins the Big 12, they'll throw them in. But for the most part, it's going to be 10 legacy programs, Boise State, and insert some random school. And that's what it was going to be all along. And if Boise State had 2 losses, we wouldn't even it wouldn't surprise me if Boise State somehow ends up with 3 losses before the season ends.
Well, there's only one game left. I guess they could actually because they could lose the championship game too. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Boise's going to lose to UNLV in the rematch in the Mountain West title game.
And the college football committee is going to pop aces, spades, Chris Styles, and Moet.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say unless Mike is right and this is rigged, because there ain't no way that they ain't letting Ashton Genty into the playoffs. So whatever, any means necessary.
Nah, Ashton Genty's play, like his bowl game, will be on TV.
No, but I'm just saying, like they ain't gonna Boise ain't gonna lose a game because they got dominated. I mean, because it was a close game. You're gonna have to dominate Boise. They ain't keeping Ashton Genty out that playoff. But just looking at the matchups, I still maintain that I don't like the reseeding. Like in the NFL, if the number 2 seed wins, they play like that second lowest seed, then the first seed, so on and so forth, no matter who the teams are or what order they were in before they came in the NFL or before they came in the playoffs. Whereas in college football, it doesn't quite work like that. So when you look at these matchups, Arizona State, they got their shot this weekend. The playoff has already begun. They play Arizona in their rivalry game, the Commonwealth Cup, this weekend. They win that game, they make it to the Big 12 championship game. Guess what? That's your semifinal to get into the playoff. So if they win, they're in, for lack of better words. But Iowa State is still in the conversation. If they win, they're in that same title game as Arizona State. If they lose, there's some weird stuff happen. It could be BYU, it could be Colorado. So this isn't what this bracket is going to look like when the season ends.
The committee should want some. I know we talked about this before. I think we talked about it during the college basketball tournament and how people love Cinderella for the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament. That 15 beating the 2 or that 13 beating the 4, it's great. But then after that, let's get the big boys in here, send the little kids to bed. And you're like, in college football, they completely despise it. Complete 180, of a concept and ideology. If I'm the college football playoff committee, I'm like, you have so many games. Check it out. The first week, you got 4 games. Then another 4 games, so that's 8. Then you get 2 more, that's 10. You get 11 games. So if you get a first round matchup of Ohio State versus, Arizona State as of right now, and it's a blowout. You got 3 other games that should be pretty competitive. Even if all 4 blowouts, that leads the conversation to next week of, will these top 4 teams really lock in their position as a top 4 team? Because right now, Boise State being 4, people probably thinking like, there's no way Ohio State loses to Boise. So it's like you still get your conversation, you still get your narrative, you still get your commercials, you still get your airtime, you still get people watching football from what are these games probably going to be? If they're all on one day, they start at noon? Or if they go over 2 days, I don't know.
It's over 2 days. It's over 2 days.
So you got college football on the minds of people for 2 days. College football, 2 days back to back, 4 games,
right,
2 weeks in a row. On top of the other bowl games, the other draft picks, because it looks like Colorado probably won't be in one of these bowl games unless a lot of things happen. Because the Big 12 is like 8 teams still alive, so you still have that entertainment aspect. You still have all the guys getting drafted. We still have the NFL where teams are going to be tanking. You got NFL teams that are tanking, getting themselves in position. So watching the college football bowl games, seeing who the Raiders are going to draft, who is Dallas going to draft. Like, the buzz around football sells itself from September to February. You don't need to manufacture it by giving me all these big names because the cream's going to rise to the top.
Right. Right. And that's where we are, so there's a lot to remain. We got SMU in the ACC title game. If Miami wins this week at Syracuse, you'll get Miami SMU. So that could flip. And then once we get there, can the ACC actually get 2 teams in? But then you got Clemson on the outside. They're 7-1 as well in the ACC. If Miami loses this weekend, it's Clemson because they have already wrapped up their ACC schedule. And then they get a winning in because, we'll see if they beat South Carolina this weekend. So
Miami, a 10-2 Miami, I'm putting in over a 9-3 Bama.
But are you putting in a 10-2? Here's a question. But are you putting in a 10-2 Miami over a 10-2 Clemson, who didn't play in the ACC championship game?
Well, because Clemson put themselves behind the 8 ball, you gotta jump the person in front of you.
And that's kind of the thing with the committee, where I was talking about how they say they re-rank every week, but they don't unless things change. So, like, if the playoff were today, first of all, this shit would have been dead on arrival, and next year they would have changed the rules if Boise actually gets a bye. That's first and foremost. Second of all, looking at this bracket, if I'm Oregon,
they would just have to play that game in Arizona. They would have to play Boise's game in Arizona or in Vegas. They'd have to play because Oregon's game, because they're going to be NFL stadiums. They just got to figure out where to play the games. They're going to sell out. Make the ticket prices reasonable so you can sell them all out. Don't make them $700.
Well, if I remember correctly, and y'all can correct me out there if I'm wrong, I think that all the first round games are at home, on campus, and then round 2 goes to the bowl game structure. But if I remember correctly, the teams can pick the bowl, so Oregon can say, "I want to play in the Rose Bowl."
Because that's right down the
right. That's the way I think I remember it. So I'll double check it, but y'all correct me if I'm wrong out there. But I remember seeing that, or it might just be the first place team gets the choice. I don't know, but anyway. So as you look at this, Oregon is more likely going to play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, unless Ohio State loses to Michigan this weekend. But
so that puts Penn State. Penn State plays who this week? Off the top of your head,
Maryland.
So Penn State. I talked about this,
and it's at home too.
Being third, being a one-loss team, sitting at third in the Big Ten, one loss, and I mean the SEC is kind of crazy, but if you were a Big Ten team with one loss but you're still third, it's perfect because you don't have to play. You're in. I think Indiana plays. They have Purdue, which should be a win. So if they're sitting at 3-4, and then Ohio State goes up and loses to Oregon,
that's what I was about to bring up.
They're in, and I know because the Indiana coach asked him in his post game press conference, "You think you're still in?" He's probably thinking the same way I am. I mean, if he's watching the show, he'd be smart. But it's like, so all we gotta do is beat Purdue and just wait for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
guys can heal. Guys can get a little break. Yeah, absolutely. Because who are you going to jump them with? You can't jump them with anybody with 3 losses. You can't. It's unconscionable if they tried to do it. 1 loss Big Ten school with, was it 16 teams in the Big Ten right now? 18. Some crazy high number like that. Some like 16 to 18 teams. And you have teams 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the total of, at the end of the season, 3 losses, because Ohio State's beating Michigan, Indiana's winning their game, Penn State's winning their game, Oregon's winning their game. So you got the top 4 Big Ten schools with 3 total losses, and you're going to try to jump in Alabama with 3 individual losses of any of those teams. You can't do it in my America. Can't do that.
Well, we'll see. Like if some of these teams lose, I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Big Ten wins out and they get 4 teams in, and Alabama's on the outside looking in. Not knocking it. Just
no, I get it.
I want honesty. I want to see, are you going to tell the truth when not even a gun's to your head, when you have to go to the mic?
Yeah, like don't shit in my pocket and tell me it's chocolate.
Boy, stop. I was gonna be bad, but I liked it. I can't say that, but I like it. I like
it. But yeah. So
hold on, let me let that marinate. That was a bar. Don't shit in my pocket and tell me it's chocolate.
that was bad joke 101 right there. You know what I'm saying?
Shit in my pocket and tell me it's chocolate.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, Dallas Mike said the Weasels got a chance.
Listen, man, I'm about to argue with somebody just
up in the horseshoe. You know what I mean? But yeah, so
it's too many weapons in Ohio State, and like their defensive line is playing at another level right now. I'm not sure Michigan has the moxie at quarterback, because you need. We talked about the NFL a lot in Eli Manning Super Bowl against 18-0 Patriots. the Giants' defensive front was killing Tom Brady. No one was even close to the Patriots that whole year. That defensive front, if they weren't hitting them, they were disrupting them. And he knew, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. But they had shown, like, this consistency from their front four, and they were rotating like 7 guys in. Ohio State's doing the same thing. They're just attacking the quarterback. Like I said, this game against Indiana looked like a lot like the game against Akron when the dude was on the bench with no shoulder pads on and dropped his water bottle and couldn't pick it up.
Yeah,
just ice taped up. He's like, you couldn't tell him a joke. Nothing. He was hurting so bad, but he stayed on the sideline. That's what the Indiana game looked like. Just a meeting at the quarterback. And I think if Michigan doesn't hit some big plays early, or some fortunate, maybe like a bad snap or fumble or somebody at Ohio State, it just seems unlikely.
I mean, hey, Michigan got a defensive line on them too. And, Ohio State, we talked about it. They lost their center. They're already down their All-American left tackle. So, I mean, Michigan could generate pressure.
Was that the case when they played Indiana last week?
Indiana's defensive line is not as good as Michigan's. But yes.
State, okay.
Yeah.
How'd they do?
Hey.
It was pretty good, right?
Man, so look, man, let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about the Hoosiers real quick, and then we wrap this up.
Right.
So I was thinking about this because, of course, the whole talk is Indiana is going to lose. They're going to be out. They're going to show that they don't belong. It's bullshit. Back to your point real quick, because you can't in one breath say that Ohio State is the number 2 team. They're dominant. They're a national title contender. But then you're going to penalize me for losing to that team.
The dominant team.
So even in your subjective argument, there's a void of logic. But just staying along with it, okay, like they got beat bad. That game was 7-7 in the second quarter, going into halftime until the punter botched the catch on the snap.
Inclement weather.
Gave him a first.
Moment.
Yeah, gave him a first and goal. Yeah, and they went up, and it was 14-7 at the half instead of 7-7. I ain't gonna say they lost the game because of that. I'm gonna just say it might have got out of hand. But you can't have that argument because Bama didn't just lose. They lost by 21. Their best win, even though it's Georgia, has 2 losses.
Yeah,
they beat Tennessee.
Bama they got mugged for a touchdown early in the fourth. I don't know what the ref was looking at. I know, like I saw a couple of clips of it, after you seen it live or whatever. It was like he was looking in the end zone, and then he threw the flag. People were like, "Why was he waiting for the touchdown?" I was like, "Well, he called illegal touching." So it's like you got to wait and see if the guy touched the ball, because that guy wasn't supposed to touch the ball. So it was a bad call. They were clearly staggered. Ryan Williams was clearly uncovered, and there should have been a touchdown. But even then, that's 24-10. Granted, it's 14 minutes left, but they couldn't stop the run.
Right.
So Oklahoma would have just been running the ball anyway. They were on the road. It wasn't like they had that touchdown changed the momentum of the stadium. That touchdown still had a stadium full of fans with the 14-point lead before the penalty called it back. Bad penalty. They really got to do something about these refs. I've heard a lot of like different coaches clamoring for the refs, and we talk about it all year long. There should be some kind of fail-safe. They can't walk around like their shit don't stink. Like if you mess up the call, someone's got to call in a real time. Nah, he messed that up.
Right.
And then make the right call. Like I know the NFL, they have like the quick review.
Right.
Someone called like, nah, that was incomplete.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
Alabama had they had their shots, and as an SEC school, you are given a 30-meter lead, which is essentially you got a 2-loss lead on pretty much everybody else. That 3, you're passed up. And if you get it late, there's only so much you can do. You get it early, maybe you can bounce back.
And Ole Miss, I better not hear a peep out of you, because your 3 losses, none of the teams are ranked. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to hear nothing from you.
Did they release a statement about Jackson Dart? Was he sick? Was he concussed? Because he's like looked like he was thrown up. Like he threw up after
I haven't heard anything.
And they ruled it incomplete and he came back out. He was like,
I do
looked despondent. He looked like he was not connected to the environment that he was in.
Yeah, I remember it, but I haven't seen anything to speak on that. You know,
in the triple coverage.
But also, we almost forgot. Real quick. Quinn Ewers, getting that ankle MRI. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, first time playing A&M in 13 years at Kyle Field. Playoff chances on the line.
They got Arch Manning. One thing Arch is going to get some great quality quarterback advice over Thanksgiving. Like when his whole family's sitting on FaceTime, it's like, listen, man, these are the moments that you got to do. Blah, blah, blah. You got a few Super Bowls and a couple Hall of Famers in your family. I think you're good to go. So Texas has good problems.
For sure. But we will be back on Friday. Happy whatever day to y'all. Do me a favor out there. Enjoy the football. Have fun. Spend time with your family that you could have been spending on May 1st, but it ain't have a title on it, so you didn't. You know what I'm saying? Have fun. Watch football. Keep up with the NBA. We'll be talking some of that on Friday. Russell Westbrook with 24 points in the fourth quarter last night, and they lost by 27. Whew.
NBA is weird.
That's nasty. That's nasty. But we're going to have picks. And when we run out of those, we're going to have more picks. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. He is the one and only Mr. Logical. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
And it's 2-5. We be back on Friday. See you then. Peace.